fire got drier and drier as he sat and he stared at the beer in his hand. I pulled up a chair and I asked him his trouble. He said, you never have seen such a fool of a man. Before I went to the bar with his pint glass for filling, old Patrick, he asked me, well, is it more of the same?
7 o'clock, we will call the meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. Members of the public who wish to watch and listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. WCTV, Channel 9, Comcast, Xfinity, Channel 37, Verizon, Fios, and live stream at wctv.org. This meeting of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access proceedings in real time via technological means. Members of the public who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may also do so via telephone by dialing 1-646-558-8656 and enter meeting ID 898-0259-4122. Then press pound and press pound again at the next voice prompt. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the meeting designated for public comment by following the steps previously noted, then press *9 on their telephone keypad. This will notify the meeting host that the caller wishes to speak. All callers using this feature will be placed in queue in the order they enter the prompt. In the event that, despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide for real-time access, we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as we are able. All votes will be roll call in alphabetical order. As always, I do want to thank our IT Director, John O'Neill, and our friends at WCTV for recording this for audiovisual purposes and for later viewing. And I do want to wish a happy birthday this January 31st to Beverly Dalton in the town manager's office. We'll go to roll call. Selectman Bendel.
Here.
Selectman Kyra.
Here.
Selectman DePalma.
Present.
Selectman O'Mahony.
Here.
And I am present. All members present. The board is reconvening after an executive session for the purpose of discussing the purchase, exchange, lease, or other acquisition of real property at 201 Lowell Street in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A6. As an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town as so determined by the chair. At this time, I would ask that you would rise if you are able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have some transmitting of the Treasury warrants, numbers 29, 29A, 30, and 30A. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. DePalma, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Discussion. Hearing none. Mr. Bendel.
Yes.
Mr. Kyra.
Yes.
Mr. DePalma.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony.
Yes.
And I am a yes, it is unanimous. And we move now to our first appointments with Shelley Newhouse, our health director. Ms. Newhouse, certainly we have some encouraging news to get to, but I did just want to kind of set the table for you as I did have a conversation with Mr. Hull and Ms. Colburn Dion, our assistant town manager, earlier today about the work that you and your department have been putting in. And I know that my colleagues and I have certainly had a great appreciation for the amount that you have been doing over the past 10.5 months now, but hearing even more of the details about what you and your department have been doing for that time, I think we are very lucky as a community to have your diligence and your work ethic as you work to keep us safe. So I want to let you kind of share an update as to where we are and answer a couple questions from the board.
Oh, thank you for those kind words. That was nice. So our numbers are trending down, which is very nice. Glad to hear. I'm glad to see that. It's what I thought would happen after the Christmas break, in the holiday break. I think that this is going to be on trend for a little while. We may see another spike up after February vacation, but I think that this is where we want to be. This is where the state is trending. So hopefully people will still keep up the good work with wearing a mask, social distancing, and playing by all the rules. So I think that's really what is helping. I'm not sure. I think people are excited the vaccine is here. So we'll hopefully just keep, like I said, seeing that trend go downward. Right now, big news today too is the vaccine. So I can assure everyone out there that I do not have the vaccine yet. I'm not hiding it. I'm not hoarding it or anything. I just don't have it. I don't have it to give. So the governor was on today at 12:30 talking, and I must have gotten a phone call every minute. When can I get a vaccine? When can I get a vaccine? And I just don't have it to give. We put our order in. Hopefully I'll receive it next week and I can start clinics next week. I'm still in phase 1 to do some phase 1 people that haven't gotten vaccinated yet. So I know they said, next week, phase 2 will be opening up, but I still have to finish my phase 1, which is some of my, which would be 4, 5, and 6 on that slide. So, and actually anyone in that whole slide that's a Wilmington resident that hasn't gotten a vaccine can come to my clinic and get a vaccine. After phase 1 will be phase 2. They say it's going to open pretty soon, but I, like I just said, I have to finish this phase before I get to the next one, which will be for opening up to a larger population. We're going to start first with those people that are 75 plus. So I can tell you that I requested 1,500 doses. I don't think I'll get that. I think that I'll probably get 100 if I'm lucky. So but that's going to be every week. So we'll just keep on trudging along. People in their eligibility groups, if they want, they can travel to the mass vaccination sites if they don't want to wait for Wilmington to get their vaccine. So that would be like at Gillette. Fenway is opening next week. There's going to be one up at the Doubletree in Danvers. But everyone's in the same boat. So you can't go to Burlington or Billerica or anywhere else and get a vaccine right now as a resident because they just don't have any. So there's, I don't know where they are. I'm ready to have these clinics. We're ready to go. It's just a matter of when I receive the vaccine. So I just make sure that everyone's patient and look on the website, follow Wilmington Health Department on our Facebook page. The word will get out there when it's available. And don't worry, we will get to everyone that wants it to come to Wilmington. It's just, people just have to have a little bit of patience, and we're excited. I just am waiting like everyone else. Don't know if anyone has any questions.
So just want to say, I did have a question. So when you do get in your first shipment and the incremental shipments after that, how would one go about actually getting it? Would they sign up? Is it a first come, first serve? How does it work? If you're ordering 1,500 and you are expecting 100, certainly I would expect that there are probably more people that would be eligible to get it in phase 2 than 100. So,
right. So I'm hoping that I'll get, obviously we're going to start requesting vaccine weekly, and we'll just keep requesting more and more and more. And then they'll just, as soon as the feds hand the state more vaccine, then they can hand it out to all the people that are requesting it. So it's going to start off slow with fewer vaccine available, and then it'll just keep going up and up and up. So it has to be by appointment only. It's going to be a registration link that I already have ready to go. I just can't publish it yet. And we'll first start with, I have some congregate care settings that I need to get to, and the home health care workers and the non-COVID facing healthcare workers. So as soon as we get through those, we'll move on to the 75 plus. So The registration will be, unfortunately, first come, first serve, but we'll just keep on going every Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. We're gonna have our vaccination clinics right now from 9 to noon. And we'll add more times and more days as we get more vaccine and as we move along. So we just have to get up and running.
Thank you. I want to know. Go ahead, Mr. Kyron.
Yeah, Shirley, just a question on the phase one that you're finishing. Does that include just the first shot, or does it include the second shot and then you're totally completed with that phase one? And if it doesn't include the second shot, when someone gets their first shot, are you automatically, putting them on a list for their second shot to be notified it's time to come in? And are you gauging for that for the vaccine to come in? If you're only getting so many vaccines to give out, how's that working?
So whatever amount of vaccine that I get, I automatically get that many more on the second dose. So phase one is just the first shot. That's it. So when we do those in the next 2 weeks or so, and when people after they get their shot, and they have to be monitored for 15 to 30 minutes as they're sitting there waiting, they have the opportunity to sign up right there and then for their second shot. So they don't have to come back to Wilmington to get it, where I'm encouraging people to do that. So as long as you get the same vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, you can really go anywhere to get it. But I would encourage people to just come back to where they got their first one, just to make it simpler. So I'm guaranteed to get, if I get 100 doses, I'm guaranteed to get my 100 almost a month later for the second time, for the second dose.
Right. Thank you. And again, thank you and your staff for the work that you're doing on behalf of the community. Thank you.
Ben, you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shelley, thanks so much. I can't imagine how incredibly busy you are, and everybody we talk to has high praise for you and your staff. So certainly well deserved with all your hard work. Just like you, we get a lot of questions. The biggest question is who, when, and where, right? They want to know. And so a couple questions on that. So if I'm in that first group that you plan to vaccinate in terms of, and I'm 75 plus, and I'm not comfortable accessing a link on Facebook or a website, do we have a alternative for those folks?
Yeah. You'll be able to call the senior center and they'll help you with registering. They're going to register you. So if you don't have a computer or you're not good at it, they can help you do it. So because unfortunately it all has to be by appointment. There can't be any walk-ins.
Okay. And that's good to hear. How about the physical space in terms of when the person is registered? Are 100 people going to line up at your office door? Where's the physical space which will be vaccinating?
It's going to be at Shriners Auditorium on Fordham Road, at the end of Fordham Road. I'm going to stand up my clinic, and it'll be nice because people, when they register for an appointment, it goes by time. So I have it in 5-minute increments. So 9 o'clock, 9:05, 9:10, 9:15. So people will just. That's a pretty large space, so I have plenty of room to space people out. So I think it'll work well there. Shriners has been so nice to us and so gracious to us to let us use their facility. And the nice thing is I can leave my clinic, I can stand it up and not have to break it down. So, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, when we leave there, it's nice. We can just show up the next day and everything will be, other than bringing the vaccine, everything else will be there for us.
Yeah, special thanks to them. That's terrific.
Yes.
In terms of what a resident can expect, some people have hesitation, others do not. Others are super eager to get over there when they get to Shriners. Do you have any idea of what a resident could expect? We certainly see long lines on TV, but I don't think that'll be a case with what you've outlined with the schedule. So, I would imagine they'll walk in, they'll identify themselves. It should move pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, so you're gonna walk in and you'll say, you know, I'm Greg Bendo, and it's all by alphabetical order, all done on a computer, and we'll check you off that you checked in. And then you'll walk in and you'll go to one of 7 stations, and you'll sit down, and you'll have a nurse and what I call as a scribe, someone that sits with the nurse that checks off all your information while you're getting the shot. The nurse will talk to you, has a couple questions for you, and then that scribe will fill out your card, which is your vaccination card. You can keep it in your wallet if you like, and then on it will list the date and the type of vaccine and the lot number that you got. They'll give you that, and they'll also give you a little card that has a URL and I don't know what they call them, but when you take, John, maybe you can help me, when you take that little picture of scan it and it brings up the URL, I forget what that's called. But it's a
barcode.
Yeah, is that what it is? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So then they're gonna have to sit down and they're gonna have to be monitored depending on their own individual criteria. It could be anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. So while they're sitting down, they can register for their second shot. So that's the way we did it with the first responders, and it worked really well. So we'll have someone that's walking back and forth in front of these people while they're being monitored for any adverse reactions to the vaccine. And once they're fine and they've done their 15 or 30-minute time limit, they can move on and they're done in one way and out the other.
Great.
So I would expect someone to be, you know, anywhere from, it could, you know, 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes.
Great.
They should be there. It might be, you know, obviously my first couple ones could be some glitches and things. And I just ask people to be patient, getting set up, you know, or computers we feel like they always have an issue, but they have great Wi-Fi. We should be fine. So.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Cause I guess, it's important that we get that message out there. You know, I did hear from one senior citizen who's felt like she was going to be discouraged from going because she sees long lines on TV, and maybe I have mobility issues and I can't wait in line for hours. So I think it's important that we get that message out there to residents, which you just outlined, that it will be a fairly quick and painless procedure, you know, a process from start to finish. So I think that's really important so that people feel comfortable if they want to get the vaccination. And then just 2 quick follow-up questions. You mentioned the first responders. You mentioned that, just to update the community, something in the order of 70 odd first responders were vaccinated last week.
70 first responders. And again, if there's any first responders out there that reside in Wilmington that haven't got a vaccine, my first clinic will be open to them. So they'll take priority. If, you know, you have a couple that decide maybe I didn't get it that first go around, but maybe I should now. So they can come and do it there.
And are we providing the first responders the second dose on the job? Or are they going to have to go to Shriners as well?
Nope. We'll be doing it right on the job, right at the public safety building, which actually works out great because I can't have my second first responders clinic at Shriners because that's the only day I can't use Shriners. So it actually works out nice that I can go to. So the only clinic that I'll be having on that day will be for the second dose for the first responders at the public safety building.
And the last question I asked you last time, but I just want to confirm for people at home, this is the Moderna shot that you're administering.
Yes. Yep.
Billy, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Palmer, I saw you indicated you wish to speak.
Charlie, like everyone else, I just want to thank you for all your hard work, you and your staff. And I'm just curious, do you have enough staff to handle this? Nurses?
I hope so. I don't, you know, I have so many people that asked to volunteer, and we have the list, and they're actually now sending me, why haven't you contacted me yet? Why haven't you contacted me yet? I'm like, I don't have any vaccine. So I'm like, don't you worry, you'll get sick of me contacting you, because that's all you're going to hear is, can you come help? Can you come help? All my volunteers, it's coming, the sign up sheet. We have it. we have everyone's name, everyone's information. So, please stick in there, because like come April and May, I'm still going to need you guys to volunteer. So it's, everyone wants to volunteer, next week, but I need those long haulers to vaccine. And there's going to be so many vaccination sites popping up. You're going to see them everywhere. I think in the next month or so, there's going to be so many sites available for people, not just, Wilmington, but there'll be so many more sites that people can go to.
Well, again, I just want to thank you very much, you and your staff. You deserve the town's praise.
Thank you.
Just again, I feel like I'm always the one that brings up the rear, reminding people until you get the vaccine, you should still be doing all the things that we've been expected to do since last March, right?
Mhm.
So it's great that the vaccine's here. It's great that people are getting vaccinated, and hopefully that's going to curb things. But until then, we still need to wear masks, socially distance, wash hands, all that stuff, right?
Absolutely. And, just because you get the first dose of the vaccine doesn't mean that you're fully immune to COVID. So you still have, that's what the second shot is for, to give you that 90 to 97% immunity. So it's still important that you social distance, not have parties, wear a mask, do everything you're supposed to be doing. And our numbers will still continue to go down, which will be great.
Thank you, Shelley.
Mr. Chair, just a question, if I might. So one of the things, I guess, that perhaps hasn't been thought about to this point, but hopefully in the next few weeks, as people start in mass to get the vaccine, first dose and then second dose, Shelley, what kind of direction is being provided about the continued diligence with using masks and distancing and all? Because once someone has the first or particularly the second dose, I'm guessing there'll be mixed signals if those people stop the process that we've been becoming used to for the last 10 months.
Mm-hmm. So the mask order is still in effect, so you'll still have to wear a mask. So what the COVID vaccine does for people is it's preventing you from getting it, but they're not quite sure if it prevents you from spreading it. So only time will tell for that. So let's say, you don't get vaccine, but you could be that little spreader, even though you got the shot. They're just not sure that they don't know that yet. So that's why we have to still wear masks and still social distance. So those, that guidance has not been lifted, and I don't see that being lifted for some time.
Mr. Chairman,
Then,
two follow-up questions through you. If I could ask John to throw that graph back on the screen one last time. Just, thanks so much. And Shelley, you mentioned in your update today that you think that the majority of the cases, which are declining, which is great to see, been declining since right after Christmas, based on your updates. If I look back into December today, any other trends you see? I know you mentioned the families, right? It's
Yeah.
Say if it gets affected one person in the household, it's probably going to make its way around the house.
Sure does. Right off the bat, whole household. So that's why you see, if you look at like the age breakdown, you see the higher numbers are like 31 to 50 and 51 to 65. Those are all your parents. And then you have like the 0 to 18s. Those are all your kids. So it's all, household spread. It's huge. I'm not seeing spread in the schools. I'm not seeing spread like just in the community. I'm seeing it, one person brings it home and then the whole family gets it. And that's typical. I'm seeing that everywhere in other towns too, in my group that we talk about every week. That's what we're seeing.
And Shelley, you've seen a lot of debate on the TV the last 2 or 3 days about one mask versus two. I wonder if
two masks is better than one. It really is. The tighter that it is to your face, the better off. If you have an air gap around here, or that's why some of these masks, you can like press it against your nose like that. You should have a tight seal around your face. So if you put one mask on and then you put another over it, you're even that much more protected.
Thank you.
Because it is a respiratory virus. So think about nothing. You don't want anything getting in there.
Well, as I've been told on many occasions, I look better with a mask on, so better too.
Well,
Thank
where to?
See, Chief Kavanaugh wants to weigh in on that issue.
Sure he does.
I also have a face for radio.
Chief, I know it's been a long day for you and your department, but how are things at the fire department?
Things are going well. I really don't have anything new to report on the COVID front. We're status quo, still pushing forward. We're just trying to support Shelley as much as she needs. Her and her team have been excellent with getting everybody who wanted to be vaccinated very quickly last week, and I have no doubts that they're going to do it again in the coming weeks. So that's really all we're doing. We're trying to keep on top of CARES and the FEMA grants well, not the grant, but the project for COVID. Rebecca Sanderson's been doing that. I actually am prepping for the finance committee meeting tomorrow night, where I'll have a kind of a more extensive section, really, where I can go over the numbers a little bit more for you, so I won't bore you with them tonight. All I can tell you is that we are taking advantage of every avenue in which we are eligible.
Thank you, Chief. And the vaccine rollout to your department went pretty smooth?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The vaccine rollout to your department seemed to go pretty smoothly.
Oh my God, yeah, it was very good. So Shelley had sent out a link. The link was sent out to the membership, so they were able to decide whether or not they wanted it. And obviously, they knew ahead of time whether or not they were going to, when it was going to be, and they were able to sign up for a time slot. They came in. It was pretty seamless. She had registration right in the lobby, but again, they're all pre-registered, so it was just more of a checking and making sure that all the information was correct. They went into we use the interrogation room. That's the room between the lobby and the big training room. They went in there. Tracy was able to give them their vaccine. Then they went into the big training room and sat and were monitored until their 15 or 30 minutes was up, and got their card and they left. So it really did go very smooth. I don't really think there were any hiccups, so I can't commend them enough for how well that went. And I think it was on a smaller scale, a good go through for Shelley and her team. When this all opens up to the bigger push, that they're much more comfortable with the system.
And everyone's already registered for their second shot. So
correct. Yeah.
Fantastic. Any comments or questions from other members? All right, well, seeing none. This new host, Chief Kavanaugh, thank you both again for your continued efforts. It's very much appreciated. I know it's been a long haul, but we're very grateful for the service of both of you two as individuals and your respective departments as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our 7:15 appointments is Mr. Hall, our town manager, for the presentation of the town manager's proposed fiscal 2022 budget. Mr. Hall?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Jonathan Eaton, members of the Board of Selectmen, Chairman John Doherty, and members of the Finance Committee. In accordance with Chapter 592 of the Acts of 1950, as town manager, it's my responsibility and honor to present, quote, a careful, detailed estimate of the probable expenditures of the town the ensuing fiscal year. Before you this evening is both the operating expenditures as proposed for fiscal 22, which begins July 1, 2021. In addition, you also have the capital improvement document, which is a 5-year plan. It's been now several years that we've provided this, and this really looks at the larger expenditures items with a expected life of 3 or more years, a cost of $20,000 or more. And these projects are largely building construction, infrastructure improvements, upgrades to our parks, vehicles, technology, those kind of things. As is always the case, the budget is prepared recognizing that there are numerous competing requests against the backdrop of limited resources. And ultimately what I have to make decisions on, and certainly don't do it alone, have the assistant town manager and the finance director that work very closely with me on this, looking at what can be funded in the current fiscal year and what can be deferred, and also being mindful of the consequences of deferring certain expenditures. So with that, the first goal of mine going into this fiscal year, this budget preparation, was looking at developing a budget that went up no more than 1% as compared with the current budget, which was certainly a challenge in light of some of the pressures that we always see going into a new fiscal year, namely employee costs, which is the vast majority of the budget, whether it's cost of living increases, the benefits associated with that. In this case, insurance, construction costs, all of those elements, make for a challenge in terms of trying to restrict the budget growth. But I will say that, in this case, we were able to limit the budget increase to not more than 1%. In fact, the amount is just a little less than 0.5% increase over the current year budget. The current year budget is $119,346,489. And the proposed budget is $119,852,135, which represents an increase of $545,773. The other thing I would say is of note is that last year when I made this presentation, the budget proposal at the time was $120,817,437. And then if you recall, when we had the COVID strike, the budget was revised down in light of some expected decreases in revenue. So the number that is being proposed is less than the original number that was proposed last year. Before you on this screen is the breakdown of the four major categories for the budget in order of largest percentage of the budget. First being the public schools, Wilmington Public Schools, and you'll see that their increase is 2.5%. Next, following that are what we call shared costs, which include insurance, statutory charges, debt and interest, the stabilization account, OPEB, those kind of costs. And those costs have gone down pretty dramatically, a little over 4.5%, followed by general government, which is up a little over 2%. And then the Shawshene Vocational Technical School, that number as a percentage is a pretty high increase, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Next, on the COVID front, it's always difficult to project what we're going to be spending 6 to 18 months into the future. And we always anticipate there are some unforeseen circumstances, but clearly no one could have foreseen what was coming this past year. Very much atypical, certainly the toll that it's taken on families, lives lost, personal suffering, family members isolated, businesses stretched to the brink and worse, unemployment, remote learning at all levels of education, primary, secondary, and post-secondary, medical workers and public safety personnel pushed to the limit. I think in a couple of words, all of this comes down to just a great deal of uncertainty and unnerving, quite frankly, amongst most of us. So with that said, we wanted to look at trying to limit the increases to the greatest extent possible. You'll see here in this slide, it represents some of the push and pull, if you will, of the budget that we had to deal with. As I mentioned earlier, salary adjustments and overtime, in particular overtime, we'll talk about in a little bit, is pushing the budget upwards. Insurance, we're expecting some fairly significant insurance increases, premium increases in some categories. And then technology, we're continuing to invest in technology, and that's also a driver. On the other end of the spectrum, we have, due to the refinancing of the high school, seen a pretty significant decrease in our borrowing costs. Between that and retirement of a couple of issues, that's almost $500,000 in reductions. Trash and recycling, essentially associated with the trucks that are involved in the collection process, that was about $162,000 reduction. Heating fuel under George Hooper's purview is down, expected to be down about $106,000. Property valuations, last year was a big property valuation year, so the assessor's office required funds for that. That's down about $100,000. And then also we are, in spite of the fact that we're continuing to invest in capital, the amount that is being invested in capital has been reduced by a fairly significant margin. So with respect to revenues, revenues are expected to go up a little over 500,000. Here you see the pie chart, which is also included in the budget book. On your far left is the 21, the current pie, if you will. And you'll see, as always, the biggest share of the pie comes from the tax levy. And in fiscal 22, the proposed budget increases the amount of the burden from the tax levy slightly, going from about 76% up to about 78% in terms of the overall levy. And then after that, it drops off pretty dramatically, with local aid making up the next largest share, followed by local receipts, and then other available funds. In terms of Proposition 2.5, that really makes up the largest share of the increase in revenue. Every year, as you know, per the statute, the town is able to increase the levy by up to 2.5%. Also, we look to new growth to help us out. This coming year, we expect new growth to be less than in years past. And that new growth is really a consequence of building projects. And so as we approach the end of some of these larger scale projects like Murray Hill, McDonald Road, Spruce Farm, Green Meadow, and those projects essentially wrap up, that money that went into new growth, those projects will not be there. Also, in the last few years, we've seen a fair amount of new growth associated with personal property. So businesses, if they have various equipment that's part of their operation, they are taxed on that equipment. The expectation is, with the downturn in the economy, that there will likely be less investment in some of that new equipment. And so personal property is probably going to tail off as well. Local aid, you'll recall last year when I revised the budget projections and we dialed back the budget a bit, my expectation at that time was that the state was going to reduce our local aid in the form of Chapter 70, which is school aid, and the unrestricted general government aid. And I was projecting at the time a 5% reduction in education aid and 15% in unrestricted general government aid. Fortunately, due to the great efforts of the governor and the legislature, they essentially held communities harmless, so to speak, in level funded local aid. So that reduction was perhaps unnecessary, although my expectation is in this coming fiscal year that we will receive cuts in local aid. I think in their efforts to hold us harmless this past year, they had to dip into their rainy day funds and other one-time revenues, and I'm just not sure they're going to be able to do that a second time. Motor vehicle excise, which is another, and this kind of represents the up and down, so to speak, of local receipts, some going up, some going down. Motor vehicle excise, we're expecting to see that tail off. While the motor vehicle excise tax to this point has been relatively strong, my expectation is with the ongoing unemployment of unfortunately many residents in town, that the number of new cars that are purchased in the coming fiscal year is probably going to be a tailing indicator, if you will, of the ongoing economic decline. So we're budgeting a lower amount for motor vehicle excise. With regard to our ongoing goals, clearly the first out of the gate is education and making sure the students in Wilmington have the best opportunity possible in terms of developing their own future. Wilmington Public Schools, as I noted earlier, their budget is up 2.5%. The vast majority of that is related to salary adjustments, $1,023,190. They are not planning any new staffing increases, and they are continuing to invest in technology. Most of the $330,000 that is shown here is related to technology, with a couple of exceptions. Shawshene Tech, which I talked about earlier, I had a conversation with Superintendent Brad Jackson, and he indicated that this is really an enrollment-driven increase. The expectation is that the enrollment from Wilmington is going to go up about 30 students. As of October 1st of this past year, 2020, there were 246 students from Wilmington attending the tech. That number is expected to go up by 30, and as such, that is the basis at the moment for the increase there. I would say that his budget, when I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, is preliminary. He has not gone to the school committee, as I understand it, yet, and I would expect to be getting final numbers from him once his budget is approved by the school committee. With regard to education generally, just going back a bit on that last slide. So I did have a conversation with Superintendent Brand about the school's budget, and one of the things that he has seen this year is a fairly accelerated decline in enrollment. And as I think we all know, Wilmington Public Schools have seen a gradual decline in enrollment for the last many years, and that's projected into the future for the foreseeable time. But I think due to COVID, in many cases, parents out of concern about the COVID situation in general, and perhaps to some measure about the remote learning, sent students to private schools or homeschooled. And so as a consequence, they've seen a drop in their enrollment. Dr. Brand does believe that many of those students will return in the coming academic year, and is basing his budget with that expectation. We did have a conversation about the gradual decline in enrollment and what that means for the budget. And it is, I think, fairly clear that there is no strict corollary between the number of students necessarily in the budget. I think other factors come into play here in terms of the services that are provided to students within the student body, state and federal requirements that the schools have to attain. So it isn't easy to say that because the student population has dropped off by 30, that automatically results in a reduction in the budget of X. But Dr. Brand did indicate that he will be looking at the declining enrollment in terms of what that means with regard to staffing going forward. With regard to school technology, there are, as has been the case now for quite some time, the schools are looking to make some upgrades to some of their equipment. The first being projectors in the elementary schools. This is the first of a 2-year project to replace school projectors. Some of them have run to their end of their useful life, so to speak, and these new projectors will provide a greater visual clarity and also have improved sound quality. So there's $100,000 that's proposed for this year, and then $100,000 slated for the following fiscal year. Also, in addition to that, they're looking for $90,000 for network switches in the middle school. This is part of a 5-year capital plan. As we become more dependent upon this technology, we need to be mindful that the life of these different supporting elements is unfortunately often short. So this is replacing network switches. $68,000 is proposed for replacing computers in the high school labs. And then $30,000 is slated to replace servers that support their security system, the camera system. The current servers don't have the additional capacity they need if they were to add more cameras, so that will assist them in that way. With regard to building upgrades, as you know, back in May of 2020, the school department, Dr. Brand, Paul Ruggiero, the assistant superintendent of administration and finance, along with George Hooper and myself, worked on these statements of interest for the elementary schools with a specific focus on the Wildwood School. Those SOIs were submitted. This is a highly competitive program. Communities across the state are looking for assistance, and we recognize that the Wildwood School is in need of replacement, but we also recognize that this is part of a bigger picture, that there really needs to be a comprehensive look at the elementary schools and a integrated approach to perhaps reorienting or reconfiguring the class arrangement. So we are in the process of hearing whether we are going to be admitted into the program with MSBA. I would note that, as has been mentioned in the past, even if we are admitted into the funding program, typically it takes anywhere from 5 to 8 years from the time a community is admitted to the program until a new school is up and running. So in the meantime, we need to be working on efforts to accommodate the staff at the Wildwood. The next major goal that we have, as we have continued now for some time, is looking at ways to reduce energy consumption by improving efficiencies in both our vehicles and our buildings. George Hooper, the building's superintendent, oftentimes tells me about the importance of having a tight building envelope, so to speak, which includes windows, doors, and roofs. The plan this year calls for $85,000 to hire services that will develop these design and specifications for replacing 24,000 square feet of a roof at the Shawsheen School. Some of this roof was replaced back in 1998 and other portions shortly thereafter. It's a tar and gravel roof, but it definitely needs replacement. And the plan would be, once the specifications are prepared, to get design, to get cost estimates so that we can go to town meeting in 2022, and request funding for the actual replacement of the roof that summer. In addition to that, we are looking to replace vehicles as we do every year. Typically, as you know, we will replace 5 police cruisers. In light of the economic situation that we're facing, Chief Desmond and I had a lengthy conversation about the prospect of him being able to work with fewer cruisers or fewer replacement cruisers, and it was agreed that we would replace 2 of the police cruisers in the coming fiscal year at a cost of $100,000. And then in addition, one other vehicle that the school department is looking for is a replacement of a minivan. They have a fleet of minivans that are used to transport their special needs students to and from various programs. The vehicle in question here is a 2013 vehicle. It's the oldest in the fleet, and that is proposed for replacement in the amount of $42,000. As was noted earlier, the number of projects on the docket here are pretty significant when you look at the fact that we're just in the early stages now of working with our OPM to develop the RFQ for the architect that will help us through the process of identifying a site and then developing the design for a senior center. I'm in the process now of also hiring the OPM for the town and school administration building. Expect within the next week and a half to be able to reach agreement there on the OPM services. But in both of these cases, the senior center and the town school admin building, the expectation here is within the next 18 to 24 months that we would be in a position to go back to town meeting and look for funding for construction of these projects. Also clearly on the docket, although not quite as far along, is a fire substation. This remains a priority for us. The issue at the moment is identifying a site that is going to be suitable for a fire substation. That's a work in progress, but we're looking to make some progress on that in the months to come. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the elementary school. So there are a significant number of building projects that we really have on the docket here, and voters are going to have to make some very difficult decisions as we go forward. And clearly, this is one of the reasons that we have been building up the reserves that we have. Next, in terms of overarching goals, is technology on the town side. Mentioned earlier what the school is looking to do. I think there's incredible opportunities to be gained by the technology that we have, but it also comes at a price because we become so dependent upon it that when something goes awry, it can really be pretty disabling. And just as an aside, one of the things I want to point out while I have the opportunity is that John O'Neill has been really conscientious about making sure that the users of this technology, people like me and the folks in the town hall and public safety and other offices around town, understand the risks and are attentive to the prospects of ransomware and malware, which is unfortunately issues that have focused on local government. And there was recently a program through the state that provided for training of lay people like myself in terms of the signs to watch for, that so we don't get situations where we're bringing in malware or ransomware. The program was very successful. I think a vast majority of the employees participated. We just completed the program. And in fact, we are looking at pursuing a second program. So trying to avoid some of the risks associated with technology. And John's been very good at keeping us on track with that. In terms of investments here in technology, one of the things we're looking to do is to change out the phone system for the non-emergency public safety phones, as well as the town phone system. The non-emergency phone system has not been changed out since before the public safety building was put in place. The system needs to be upgraded, and this is the first of a 3-year effort, $70,000 is being requested in the first year to begin that transition. And the expectation is that once we complete the transition, we will be looking to sync up with the school system in terms of their phone system. This is a voice over IP system, which is different than what we currently have. Also, as was discussed and presented at the last annual town meeting, you'll recall we talked about work that needed to be done to the radio communication system at Central Dispatch. And at the time I indicated that we were starting the first of a three-year program to change out the communication systems at Dispatch. So we're again recommending $450,000. This would come from free cash to replace equipment, including repeaters, receivers, antennas, and also provide some cabling to essentially utilize the fiber optic system that the town has had in place now for a number of years. This will create some redundancies and really fortify the communication system that police and fire rely upon and that Dispatch uses. In addition, we're looking to request $35,000 for servers at the town hall and the public safety buildings. These typically need to be replaced every 5 years, and these current servers are really at their max and do not allow for any future growth. So that is, again, for $35,000. $30,000 we're seeking to purchase mobile computers for the police cruisers. Police cruisers in many respects are the mobile offices, if you will, for police officers. And these mobile computers give them the ability to do background checks when they're having to deal with individuals, whether it's on the road or otherwise. So we need to make sure that these mobile computers are changed out on a regular basis. That's $30,000. We're also looking for $55,000 to finish work that was started this current year on replacing the fire alarm alerting system and the radio box fire alarm receiving system at the public safety building. Many of the businesses in town and also the town buildings have alarm systems that send signals to public safety. So if there's an issue, police or fire can respond. And this funding would allow for an additional receiver that creates, again, some redundancy in the system so that if the first receiver goes down, the system isn't disabled. So in addition to technology, we also have other investments in capital improvements, which include the $350,000 that we're recommending for the Shawsheen School courts. This is, as you know, right now we have 3 tennis courts and 1 basketball court. The engineering was done last year to essentially remove the existing surface, do a regrade of it and a stripe and paint it, and also put vinyl fencing. That $350,000 is slated to come from free cash, and we are going to make a slight modification by changing the setup there from 3 tennis courts and 1 basketball court to 2 and 2. So with funding on that, that would start next fiscal year. We're looking to request $40,000 for engineering services associated with the Frank Kelly track. When the high school campus was largely addressed in the years leading up to 2015 when the project was done, the track was resurfaced, but what has been apparent that some of the subsurface conditions are flawed and there are cracks that are appearing in the track. And the $40,000 is to really assess what the issues are there, develop specifications so that we can next in the following fiscal year put out to bid the reconstruction of the track. So the $40,000 would be for this year, and then we would be looking for construction funding in fiscal '23. Also, we're looking to seek $150,000. Again, this would be from free cash to purchase a refurbished fire pumper. One of the things that we want to be mindful of is the ISO rating, which is an insurance rating that affects people's their insurance on their property. And I'm told that maintaining 4 pumpers, active pumpers, will avoid a potential negative effect on the ISO rating. So this would be, again, a refurbished vehicle, but would be fully functional for $150,000. We're looking to seek $235,000 to replace a DPW excavator. The current excavator is a 2000 Samsung Volvo excavator. It's certainly seen its time. It's been involved in the sidewalk reconstruction or construction projects, road projects, water main projects, and the alternative of renting these, we feel could slow down the projects, make it more difficult to schedule projects in addition to the rental cost. So we're seeking $235,000 for that. Looking for $85,000 to replace a Ford F-350 dump truck. This is an integral part of the DPW fleet with regard to construction projects, again, whether it be road construction, sidewalks, and also certainly in the winter for snow removal operations. The current vehicle is a 2008 and has over 100,000 miles on it. We're looking for $175,000 to purchase a third sidewalk plow. Currently, we have 26 miles of sidewalks network throughout the town, and that number is increasing on a regular basis. The expectation is we will continue to work on the Lawrence Street, Shady Lane sidewalk project and hopefully complete that this year. And then there's a number of sidewalk projects in queue following that. So as the network of sidewalks expands, we believe it's appropriate to have an additional sidewalk plow so that we can ensure that the sidewalks are cleared both for the students and the adults during the winter season. Looking for $42,000 for an asphalt box trailer. Currently, when the DPW goes to the asphalt plant for mix to deal with potholes or other related issues, the asphalt is loaded in the back of the dump truck and en route back to the town. Oftentimes, some of that material loses its, it cools off to the point that they're not able to use it. This hot box, if you will ensure that the asphalt maintains its temperature so that we don't have as much waste when we're bringing the material back to town. It's a cost of $42,000. $25,500, we're looking to replace the robotic total station, as it's referred to, which is an engineering tool. As you know, a major part of the engineering services is surveying work, establishing the bounds, meets and bounds between private property and town property, the rights of way. And so this equipment will replace the existing equipment, which is 12 years old and needs upgrading. We're also looking for $25,000 for engineering services associated with the intersection at Shawsheen Ave, Lake Street and Hopkins Street. These signals need to be upgraded to current standards, and the $25,000 would evaluate the and develop the specifications that would be required to actually put that out to bid in the following year and have those signals replaced. We're looking for $20,000 for traffic signal detection system on Route 62 and Woburn Street. So this would be installing these sensors on the existing lights, similar to what was done at Federal Street and Route 62. And essentially what it does is it looks at the queuing in the various legs of the intersection and responds accordingly. So if there's long queuing in one particular lane, it'll allow that traffic to go through, and it really creates a more efficient intersection. That's $20,000. We're looking for $365,000. This would be proposed from free cash to pay off the remaining balance on the amount due to Russell Disposal. You'll recall when we first contracted with Russell, it was intended to be a 10-year contract. At the time, we were just going to curbside recycling and collection. So we had to purchase barrels for 7,800 homeowners or thereabouts. And so we opted to spread that cost out over 10 years. When Russell advised us last year that they were seeking to terminate the contract, they allowed us to continue to pay down that amount. We've determined since then that it makes more sense just to pay it off in full, and we would save about $45,000 over the remaining 4 years of that term. We're also looking to seek $527,000. Again, this would be proposed from free cash to replace the suspended ceiling tiles at the Woburn Street School. This is the last remaining school that has the asbestos containing material in the suspended ceiling tiles. I would note that it is encapsulated. It does not pose any risk to occupants in the building, but it does complicate things and get expensive when tiles have to be replaced or if they have to be removed because there's some cabling going on for IT purposes. So the plan would be to replace all of those tiles with non-asbestos containing material. Then we are looking for $130,000. This would be from the water fund to clean 15 wells at the Browns Crossing well field. This is the largest remaining producer of potable water in Wilmington, and periodically the wells need to be cleaned because grit and sand gets into the pipes and needs to be changed out. We're proposing a similar project for the Salem Street and Shawsheen Avenue well fields. That cost is slated to be $55,000. And again, that's from the water fund. We're seeking $40,000 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund to relocate an underground sewer pump station control panel to above ground. This station is located in front of Market Basket on Route 38. The control panel has to be replaced anyways, and so the expectation is that we should remove the panel, move it to above ground, and that would be $40,000. We're looking for $25,000. Again, this would be from the Sewer Enterprise Fund to replace one of two pumps at the Shawsheen Commons pump station there off of Harold Ave in that area. And then we have $45,000 that we're looking for to purchase new voting booths. The existing booths are were 2000 model 2000 voting booths. We purchased them in 2004. We're not sure how long they will continue to maintain them. There's also some question as to whether the Secretary of the Commonwealth will be looking for communities to upgrade their voting booths. So that's $45,000. We do have some money that we have in a election fund that we will use towards that. So the actual amount that we are seeking for appropriation is about $35,000. This slide here provides a summary of where the money is coming from that will address the various items that I just went over with you. Chapter 90 is the state money. The tax levy is taxpayer generated. Free cash, taking some of our reserve, if you will, and then water and sewer. Next is addressing the policies and plans that we have in place to deal with our financial capacity. And one of the things that, it's one thing to have policies, but when you have a conversation with Standard & Poor's, they want to see consistency and that you're actually implementing the policies. In terms of refinancing the high school debt, that was a big effort on the part of a number of people. I want to give a lot of credit to Brian Perry for, who's the finance director, for having the conversations early on with our advisor and bringing this to the fore, so to speak. There was a lot of work that went into this effort because you have to pull a lot of information together. And I just want to thank Carrie Coburn-Dion, the assistant town manager, Pam McKenzie, the treasurer collector, Karen Rashes, the principal assessor, and Valerie Gingrich. All of us got together to not only present them with our finances, but also the general economy in Wilmington. And it was particularly challenging when this was all done in May of last year, because as you recall, we were right around that time starting the big slide in terms of the economy. And so Standard & Poor's really took a good look at us in terms of where they thought whether we were going to be able to weather the storm, so to speak. And the fact that we retained the AA plus, I think speaks volumes to their efforts. But the ability to reduce our debt on the high school in conjunction with retiring debt on a aerial ladder truck in the Shawshene School window project means that we're saving this year almost $500,000 in terms of debt service. And that also functions as another tool. In addition to building reserves, you also want to build up debt capacity. And the fact that our debt is a little less than 3% of our operating budget is really a pretty impressive number. It's actually on the lower end of the spectrum when you compare us with other communities. So we'll be using that going forward as we incur debt with some of these building projects. And then looking at our obligations, again, going back to the point that, it's one thing to have a policy, it's another thing to execute it. I think one of the things that Standard & Poor's was impressed by was our consistency of putting money aside for some of these obligations. And again, this year we're proposing $1 million to be directed to our capital stabilization account, $1 million to be directed to OPEB, and $1.5 million again to prepay our retirement obligation. It's noteworthy here, you see it in the footnote, that the actuaries at the Middlesex County Retirement System advised us that as of the end of 2020, fiscal 2020, based upon the $3 million that we had prepaid to that point, it effectively has reduced our obligation by $6.7 million. So, to the extent that we continue on this pace, we'll be able to really put a dent in our pension liability. With respect to personnel, I had discussions with all the department heads about the fact that it was clearly a lean year and I was not expecting to see a lot of requests for personnel. We did have some, I give a lot of credit to the department heads because they realized that we're all in the same boat here. We're swimming in the same direction. There were requests made by the police chief, Joe Desmond, and this has been, as you know, several years now, where his predecessor, Mike Bagonis, and more recently, Joe Desmond, have strongly encouraged us to look at increasing the number of officers. It's interesting to me that the number of precincts in Wilmington is still at 3, which has been the case now for about 5 decades, in spite of the fact that the number of calls for service has increased, the duration of those calls, the complexity of the calls have all increased. So when we talked last year, he was looking at 4 positions, 2 patrol officers, 2 sergeants. I had suggested we phase it in, 1 sergeant, 1 patrol officer, which was done this past year. Going forward, given the financial uncertainty, my recommendation is that we bring on one sergeant at a cost of $74,525, and then look at that other patrol position in fiscal 23. Similarly, on the public building side, they have seen some increase in responsibility, as noted in the slide here. One of the responsibilities that people may not necessarily be aware of, but with the opening of the Entile, which is certainly a gem of a recreation facility, but the restroom facilities, of course, weren't open this year, but when they were open, required regular attendance by custodial personnel. We don't have anyone designated for that spot, so it was really, kind of a revolving responsibility for various custodians. Some of the buildings that we have, well, most of them do have designated custodians. Some of our buildings do not. We have a shared custodian with the library and the senior center. The Veteran Services does not have a designated custodian. So, and then this past year, we repurposed the old town hall, which for many years had been the Wilmington Arts Council, which didn't see, saw some level of activity, but not on a regular basis. Now that space is being used by the Wilmington Public Schools for their student support services, and we have a staff of 12 individuals that are in there 5 days a week during the school year. So it's my recommendation that we bring on a relief custodian that would make sure that that area is cleaned as necessary, and also make sure that the Little West School, where the Veteran Services operate out of, is given the attention that it needs. And the cost for that base salary is $49,771. With that, I would note one of the challenges that we are facing currently, and in personnel-wise, currently and going forward into the next fiscal year, is overtime associated with the fire and the dispatch. As you recall, the town appropriated funds to hire 8 new firefighters. Unfortunately, due to a number of factors, the positions have not been able to fully staff up. It's been a combination of issues associated with COVID. The academies were shut down for a period of time. The civil service list, we're waiting for a new civil service list that has EMTs on it. So all of these things have come together, and as a result, we're going to see a significant spike in the overtime cost going forward for next year's appropriation on the fire side. We're hoping and we're told that there'll be a new civil service list in March, which will be important because we can draw people from that list. And then with the academies being able to process, get firefighters up to speed, we can have people in those positions. Dispatch is similar situation in that our overtime is beyond what we expected. Their circumstances are a little bit different. We typically do not receive applicants who have dispatch experience. We don't have transfers from other communities with dispatch experience. So oftentimes what happens is we're bringing people in, they go through the recruiting process, and then they decide that they're no longer interested, or we actually get them through the process, get them in a seat, so to speak, or at least in the training process, and then they realize it isn't really for them. In other cases, their longer term goal is becoming a police officer or firefighter. And we had 2 individuals just this year that went to the fire service, which is a good thing, but it creates somewhat of a revolving door. So we're continuing to pursue the recruiting process, but it's become a real challenge to keep the complement of people in dispatch. Next is just what I would like to do, if I could, is go through my concluding remarks, and I'm just going to read these if you don't mind. So to suggest that the past year has been one like no other is a major understatement. In January 2020, a global pandemic and the repercussions to follow were not something ever contemplated by most people. For far too many, the impact from COVID-19 has been far too personal and far too tragic. Well, there has been much that has divided us across the state, across the country, and throughout the world. One unifying force has been the desire to protect our loved ones and to make COVID history. Locally, we have much for which to be thankful. While the risk of personal exposure to COVID has been high, fire and police personnel have continued to deliver the same professional, calm, and compassionate service for which they have become known. Dispatchers, oftentimes the unsung heroes of the public safety triad, continue to convey clear and accurate information to police and fire colleagues and to calmly and professionally communicate with anxious callers. With the collaborative efforts of the Board of Selectmen, the town moderator, the Finance Committee, the town clerk, tellers and checkers, and personnel from public buildings, public works, police, fire, and the school department, we held the town's first outdoor annual meeting under the big tent. And by all accounts, it was a success. Town clerk's office and her cadre of election staff and the supporting cast from the departments previously mentioned conducted an efficient and accurate presidential election at the Shriners Auditorium. The IT department ably guided us into the new world of Zoom to replace our in-person meetings, hosting countless Zoom sessions day and night over the past 10 months. Personnel in departments like Elderly Services, Veteran Services, Library, and Recreation adjusted their entire operation to remain accessible and to respond to the new norm. Staff in the Recreation Office became utility players, assisting the town clerk's office, the health department, and wherever they were needed. Building maintenance personnel revamped working spaces with protective barriers while custodians cleaned and disinfected schools and town buildings on a regular basis, many times following cases in which employees left work reporting COVID symptoms. Public Works personnel continued to accommodate grieving family members at the Wildwood Cemetery, maintain town parks, and ensure that residents had clean, potable water. Throughout this pandemic, the health department has been the calm in the eye of the storm, disseminating timely data, responding to questions at all hours, and compassionately walking concerned residents and local business managers through the challenging protocols associated with COVID testing, social gatherings, and requirements to quarantine. Employees across all departments, along with volunteers on boards, committees, and commissions, have stepped up and continued to perform the people's business in spite of the pandemic. You may not be singled out by name, but please know that each one of you play a vital role in the operation of local government, and that your commitment over the past year has been more important than ever before. Thank you for your service. It was clear at the outset of developing the fiscal 2022 budget that this coming year would be difficult. Many people remain out of work. Businesses in town are struggling to remain solvent. Many residents are restricted to their homes and desperate to avoid isolation from family and friends. The resources at the state level have been stretched to the limit. My goal in drafting this budget were to limit the overall budget increase to no more than 1% above the current budget, to avoid layoffs, to enable departments to continue to provide the programs and services residents have come to expect, and to continue to invest in facilities, infrastructure, and equipment. The budget proposals here tonight hit the mark. The consequences of this pandemic have made this an incredibly challenging year and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. But in the words of former British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, quote, there is no education like adversity, end quote. I think it is fair to say we have all learned a great deal about our ability to adapt, to adjust, and to carry on. With the conclusion of this budget presentation, I look forward to questions and comments from the Board of Selectmen, and now pass the torch to the Finance Committee to take the public process of finalizing the town's budget from here. You will no doubt review the details and pose many questions over the next several weeks. It now becomes the work of the department heads and me to offer clarity where needed, to make the case for the recommendations, and to listen and consider different perspectives. Finance Committee meetings via Zoom begin tomorrow, 7 p.m., and will continue on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings through February before concluding in early March. Following the conclusion of the Joint Finance Committee Planning Board public hearing, again via Zoom on March 16th, the Finance Committee will meet on March 18th to make recommendations on the budget and warrant articles, with the expectation that the Finance Committee recommendations will be published and distributed to residents in advance of the May 1st annual town meeting. And before I finally relinquish the floor here, I just wanted to offer some specific thanks to a number of people that really made this all possible. First of all, I want to thank Carrie Coburn-Dion, the Assistant Town Manager, and Brian Perry. They have been putting in hours upon hours. Brian and Carrie, both since November. Brian was instrumental in pulling all the capital information together from the departments and having the initial conversations. Carrie in putting a lot of the narrative together associated with the capital, and also just for fact-checking me, so to speak, with respect to the numbers as we came down to the final turn, if you will. I want to also thank Beverly Dalton. As always, she keeps us on track in terms of all the various other deadlines that we need to meet, whether it's town topics, annual report, you name it. There's all the various meetings that we have going, and she's been vital to that. The town calendar, budget submission deadlines. She's been on top of it. Another unsung hero is Kathy Godfrey. I suspect most of you don't know her, but she is behind the scenes and my definition, misreliable, if you will, because she does the payroll. And without someone who can do an accurate payroll in a timely manner, things start to fall apart pretty quickly. She was recently promoted to the HR generalist position, and I know based upon her ability to be a quick study that she'll really excel in that area. Also, I want to give a shout out to Christine Caggiano, who's a senior clerk in our office. She's also really been instrumental in helping us along the way. She's been doing a little of everything here, between working on some of our bids, doing some benefits work, and just her personal demeanor and customer service skills. If anyone of you has talked to her, you'll know that she always approaches everyone with a smile, and I thank her and her efforts. And then finally, I want to give a big shout out to Wendy Martinello. She is the procurement and HR coordinator in town in my office. And she's largely responsible for the bidding process, works with the various departments, and is very conscientious and detail-oriented. Unfortunately, she had a pretty serious slip and fall just before Christmas, and she's been out of work for a number of weeks now. And it's been a tough stretch, I know, but in spite of that, she's still doing what she can from home, being a real trooper. And I just want to wish her well in a steady healing process. So with that all said, I thank you very much for your indulgence, and turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I certainly look forward to the Finance Committee meetings that, as you mentioned, begin tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, and then continue on Tuesdays and Thursdays through February into early March. At first blush, I'm pleased that the budget really does hit on the priorities that you enumerated. The holding the line with the budget increase that is less than half of 1%. It's just under 0.5%. Maintaining the high level of service that residents have become used to, avoiding layoffs, and continue to invest in facilities, infrastructure, and equipment, as well as the long-term planning, in prepaying retirement, the OPEB, unfunded pension liability, capital stabilization as well. So at first blush, there's not a whole heck of a lot that's the big ticket capital items, but at the same time, circumstances require a conservative approach. And I think that our ability to continue to invest in some of those long-term liabilities is a testament to not only your historical budgeting, but also as you deflected praise to the well-working or the productive team of yourself, Ms. Cole and Dion, Mr. Perry, Ms. Rashis, Ms. McKenzie, and everyone in the town manager's office. So I'm very pleased that we should be retaining the current workforce without any reductions, and that we are continuing to make improvements and planning for the long term. So, Mr. Bendel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Jeff, thank you for your presentation. Yeah, I too very pleased to see that you took a very conservative approach to this, and the 0.46% increase. I think last year was something in the order of 3.9. So obviously, I think you took a very an appropriate approach to this, and all the while, very, again, like I said in previous years, very appreciative of your investment in education, public safety, and infrastructure, which I know is really important to all of our residents. And again, the conservative approach here, I think, will be really appreciated by folks. You know, people are still hurting, a lot of people are out of work, and I think to some degree, all of us are a little concerned about what the future will hold for us financially. So, for you to, as you mentioned in paragraph 6, I believe it was, of your conclusion, to do all this while being able to maintain the level of service to our residents is really important. And so I'm appreciative of that. And so I look forward to combing through this and asking questions along the way. But I want to thank you for your presentation and your staff and Brian and Kerry and Bev and everyone involved. And so thank you very much.
Mr. Kara?
Yes, I echo your comments, Mr. Chair and Mr. Bendel. Could Mr. O'Neill pull up the slide that shows the funding sources and the expenditures just for a second?
Sure, 1 second.
Thank you. I just want to see if I saw that correctly compared to the book, that's all. No, not that one, Jonathan.
Well, okay, let's see.
So, oh, back, here you go. Yeah, just wanted to clarify with you, Mr. Hull, where it says the tax levy.
Yes.
In free cash, in the book, it's reversed those numbers. So I want to know which numbers are the correct ones.
Yes, thank you for picking up on that. I meant to mention that when we were going along. The numbers in the book are not correct. The numbers on the slide are correct. So tax levy is $1,042,500. Free cash is $2,252,000.
Okay, so the slide is the correct one, in the book is not.
That's right.
All
That's right. Thank you.
Saw that. Okay, no problem. And just a question on the Russell disposal. The town purchased all the barrels, so to speak, and so are they all going to be, now that we're going to pay off this bill, which is a good thing, we're saving $45,000. All of those barrels, are they going to be moved to the DPW site, or where are they stored? Were they stored with Russell? How is that going to work?
As far as I know, I'll confirm this with Mike, but I'm Mike Woods, but I'm fairly certain that all the barrels that we purchased, we have, over the last many years now, they've been disseminated to residents. Certainly, we had to initially provide all the barrels to each household in Wilmington, and to the extent that there were extra barrels, those certainly over the last 6 years have been taken from Russell. So I think at this point, we're well beyond the ones that they provided us with.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that they didn't
Right.
hold them. And then the other thing you mentioned was the excise tax. And I know that you mentioned that there'll be a decline because of people aren't buying the new vehicles and whatnot. And I brought this up to you a while back about the location of the buses for the school buses that they have over on a property, I think, near the Lucci's supermarket. And I've noticed in the excise tax, I think we have this 68 vehicles that we collect excise tax for, but in January of this year, there were some close to 300 vehicles there located, and they were there for quite some time. So I just want to make sure that the town is receiving the appropriate excise tax from that bus company that's housing all of those vehicles over there. Just something to keep in mind. And something also worth noting is that I noticed that we saved on legal services, which was great with the new contract with KP Law. We had a savings of $50,000, and I know you didn't mention that specifically, but I noted it in the book.
Yes.
That's outstanding there that we saved on legal services. So I just want to thank you for keeping this to 0.46%, the budget. It's just, you had a mark of 1% and you beat it. And I congratulate you and your staff, your department heads, for the work that you put into this budget. And thank you for the presentation. And I look forward to the Finance Committee meetings. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, the only question I have is on the Russell, the 350,000 that we're paying off. That's for the barrels, correct?
It's actually a 365, but yes, that's for the barrels. Yeah.
Okay. And the only question I have over that is, if the bond wasn't dropped from Russell, would we still be obligated for that amount? The service bond.
Mr. DePalma, so the contract with Russell was both for services and for the products of the barrels. So the performance bond was not related to the barrels portion of it. It was for the actual services, which they terminated. The town retained the barrels, so they're just paying off the surviving portion of that agreement.
Okay.
Anything further, Mr. DePalma?
Not right now.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of echo what Selectman Kyra said. Jeff, I really appreciate the information. We just, I'll say it because no one else has yet. We just got kind of the packet today at around 3:30. So I was trying to digest as much as I could before your presentation, just so that I would understand some of what you were saying. But it did strike me immediately, as Selectman Kyra said, that you kept it as tight as you could this year, which is absolutely necessary given what we've been going through and what we're facing. And I appreciate all of your hard work and Brian's hard work and Carrie's hard work and getting this together and getting it in front of us. And I hope everyone, I know it's difficult digesting a lot of information and a lot of numbers, but this is really kind of the most important thing that we do. This leads up to the town meeting. This is what town government's really all about. And I would just really encourage people, even if you can't watch the live Zooms of the Finance Committee discussions, try to watch them when they're rebroadcast on WCTV, hopefully, so that we have a good idea of what's really going on with the town's finances, and it doesn't, it's not a surprise to you, or you just kind of bury your head. I know I used to, when these types of discussions were happening and I was just a resident before I was on this board, I would bury my head in the sand and assume someone else was making the right decisions. And I would just encourage everybody to learn as much as they can, to ask the questions that need to be asked, so that we're all in this together and not then be frustrated if something happens that we don't want to see happen. Not that I see that. Everything that you've presented tonight, I think, makes sense. I don't see any kind of really big concerning expenditures. But you know, I want everyone to have as much information as they can about our town. And I appreciate your presentation. It was very thoughtful and thorough.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing further on that, then Mr. Hall, because you haven't been speaking for the last hour and a half, do you mind taking us through communications?
Certainly. The first item under communications is a memo from me to the board with regard to Textron. You'll recall that there was a conversation that I was a party to with representatives from Textron, National Development Company, which is a development outfit out of Newton. And it appears that Textron is looking to sell a significant portion of their property, approximately 35 acres, to National Development. They are close to a purchase and sale agreement. We're expecting to conclude that by the end of the month. Essentially looking to consolidate their operations to one building, which is the so-called Building 9, and then National Development is proposing warehousing on that site. And they have indicated, based upon the conversations that we had, that they don't have any immediate use for the ball court, basketball court, and I'm sorry, the tennis courts and the ball fields, and that there's some prospect for the town to have access to those, but that remains to be seen. Next to under communications is an email from Allison Bolano. This is directed to myself, Chairman Eaton, Dr. Brand, and the chair of the school committee, Jen Bryson. She is seeking to establish these communication boards. Her target location are on school property in the kindergarten, elementary school grounds as a feature to complement what is already on the property. She's looking to do the fundraising herself, and she is seeking approval to do that. I responded, as did Chairman Eaton, and I know that Dr. Brand and Chairman Bryson also responded to her recently. It sounds like there'll be some ongoing discussions with the school superintendent and perhaps the school committee. Next under correspondence is an item that I think the chair will take on. This is an email from Bevan, or a correspondence to Bevan Englewood with regard to Superfund Research Project.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. So a few weeks ago, I was contacted by Professor Bevan Englewood from MIT, who is the recipient of a grant from the National Institute of Environmental Health Services, which is one of the institutes of the National Institutes of Health. Grant title is Science and Engineering for Sensors, Mechanisms, and Biomarkers of Exposures. She's part of the, she's the director of the MIT Superfund Research Program. The grant that she has is a period of performance from September 1st, 2017, and is anticipated through March 31st, 2022, and she's in the process of applying for continuation funding to continue her research. Just read briefly from her one of her initial emails to me. One thing I do want to emphasize here is that our work can serve to show at what level of contaminants one should be concerned, pointing to levels below that as not being a significant concern. Continuing, she wrote, in addition, we are creating devices that clear away NDMA and related chemicals from drinking water. It is far, far cheaper to have devices under sinks rather than doing more cleanup. This will serve to further reassure community members that their water is safe. Taken together, I just want to make it clear that our work is anticipated to be highly advantageous to both the community and to the EPA. So the letter that was in the members' packet this week is just my writing to Professor Engelward, which will be part of her submission for continuation funding, and indicating my support for this type of research as we continue to pursue all avenues of maintaining clean drinking water source for residents.
Okay, so next under communications is correspondence. This is to Melanie Morash from the Environmental Protection Agency. It's directed there by Geo Insight, who is our environmental consultant with regard to the Olin project. She was seeking comments from interested parties with regard to the containment area cap. Olin has been required to establish a plan for fortifying the cap to avoid future breaches, as was the case here recently. Geo Insight suggested a number of things, including redefining or expanding on the definition of inclement weather, referencing hail events is part of the overall definition. Cautioned Olin on their suggestion to reduce the frequency of inspections as time goes on. They note in their correspondence here that the geomembrane material that is used as a protective covering degrades, and that the inspections in their estimation should not decrease as time goes on. They also requested more specificity about the types of materials that Olin is recommending. And then there was some discussion about the monitoring of the cap's integrity. Olin is proposing 6 locations for this ongoing monitoring over a 4.5 acre site. And Geo is suggesting that more monitoring locations be established. Next under correspondence is an email from, again, Melanie Morash from EPA. She provides an update on efforts to obtain access agreements. This is a key component of their ability to do further data gap work. There are 46 access agreements that they are seeking from property owners to sign off on that would allow them onto those properties for purpose of data gathering. As of January 20th, they have access agreements for 40 of those property owners. She also goes on to note that EPA has been meeting with Olin to discuss data collection efforts and determine whether other methods need to be used in terms of accessing information about the bedrock and bedrock fractures. Additionally, in this email, she notes that the Olin site has been removed from the administrator's emphasis list as of January 15th, and this is due to EPA's issuance of their plan for the cleanup of the site to the tune of $48 million.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, since we're on this topic, can I just ask Mr. Hull a question regarding the letter from Geo Insight to Ms. Morash? It's very concerning reading it. You know, what they're stating here, they're not sure about the gluing and how this covering is going to take effect, the thickness of it, and the repairs of holes and rips, and just a whole host of issues with this covering. Is she going to respond to this? I haven't seen a response from her in this. Is Mr. Deutsch, Dan Deutsch, our attorney, is he on top of this as well? For their
He's been on. Yes, he's been copied on this. I would expect that we will hear a response to these comments. I don't have a timeline on that, but
right. I mean,
my expectation is yes.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Before it goes too far afield, I mean, it just, they're talking about the inner liner and everything else. I mean, Geo Insight seems to be on top of it. I just want to make sure that Olin's not taking advantage of us here. as they've done, it seems like in the past with this containment area. So with their whole parcel of land. So
Yeah, I'll follow up on it, but my expectation is that we will hear once EPA has reviewed Geo's comments and comments that might have come from work and other groups, that we'll get some kind of a response.
thank you.
Next is correspondence, again, from Melanie Morash. This is directed to Rona Simon, State Historic Preservation Officer and Executive Director of the Mass Historical Commission, and also Mr. David Whedon, Interim Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. And this letter is going out to these two parties seeking comment. They note that EP's, as part of EPA's effort to finalize the record of decision, which describes the cleanup plan, EPA is seeking comment as to whether there are any uses of historic or indigenous significance on this property, or any artifacts that they need to be mindful of before the record of decision is finalized. Next, I have correspondence from me to the board with regard to the Woburn Street truck exclusion. This is something that's, as you know, has been a bit long in the making. The documentation here has been prepared by Paul Looney, the town engineer, and it describes the request by the town to establish a truck exclusion from Eames Street to Lowell Street along that portion of Woburn Street. We do have a letter of support from Mayor Galvin from Woburn, which is certainly helpful. My understanding in talking to Paul is that it could be 3 to 6 months before we hear back from Mass DOT on this, but we will certainly keep an eye on it. And then also under correspondence is a memo from me just providing an update to the board on the request that was made by Ginny Allen, who is the sister of Robert Allen, who is a longtime employee of the town. She was looking to acknowledge or make a commemoration on behalf of her brother Robert. Jamie McGaldy, who's our operations manager, reached out to Ms. Allen, and she has agreed to make a donation to plant a Princeton elm tree, or have a Princeton elm tree planted along the town common. Jamie has noted that we do have some trees along the common that are diseased, and so this would be particularly advantageous because it would replace one of those trees. And the other thing I think is particularly nice about this type of donation is that Mr. Allen was a longtime foreman in the tree division. So I think it's particularly appropriate. The tree is on order, and the expectation is it will be planted sometime around Arbor Day in April.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hull. Now on to item number 6 on the agenda, the board to consider changing the location of the 2021 annual town meeting to the Shriners Auditorium. During our meeting on January 11th, there was a suggestion that the town make a donation to some of the Shriners hospitals, and there was discussion with myself, Mr. Hull, and through Mr. Hull, George Hooper, the superintendent of public buildings, who reached out to Sheila Bissett at the Shriners Auditorium to try and at least compensate the Shriners for the rental of tables and chairs, as a municipality is prohibited from making a donation to a private nonprofit. Sheila Bissett, who is incidentally the 2020 recipient of the Wilmington Tewksbury Chamber of Commerce Carmen Cunningham Business Legacy Award, is apparently attempting to build on her reputation as a particularly generous person to our town, and responded to Mr. Hooper's suggestion that we pay for the rental of tables and chairs from the Shriners by asking to speak to Mr. Hooper's boss, Mr. Hall. Mr. Hooper had attempted to try and negotiate a fair deal with Sheila Bissett, and the Shriners continue to be a wonderful part of our community, and insisting that they receive no funds if this board ultimately decides to rent or to use their auditorium to conduct a town meeting on May 1st. And they have actually held this date available to us despite the fact that another entity has expressed an interest in renting it. So I certainly will open it up to further discussion or any motion if you care to make any, but certainly the Shriners continues to really just be a fantastic part of our community, and we thank them for their generosity.
Well, Mr. Chair, what would be the suggestion of town manager for a rental payment? Is that what you're looking at?
Well, the conversation was George had a conversation with Sheila about there was no, she was not interested in accepting any kind of rental payment. Really felt very strongly that this was, that the town of Wilmington had been very good to the Shriners and was really insistent that we not do that. And then the suggestion was made that, well, you know, instead of the town renting the tables and chairs for the event as was originally planned, we could rent the tables and chairs from the Shriners. And she said, absolutely not. How many chairs and tables do you need? So, you know, I mean, she's, you know, a very generous person. The Shriners are just an incredibly generous entity. And I think they, I wasn't a part of the conversation, but the sense I got from George was she was just very insistent that they want to do this for the town of Wilmington, and they do not want any kind of compensation for it.
That's I know Sheila. That's extremely generous of the Shriners that they want to do this for the town.
I mean, no question between you know, their hosting the elections and hosting the vaccines and potentially, if the board is so inclined, hosting town meeting. I mean, that's a incredible level of generosity.
There's no further comments. I'd entertain a motion to move the town meeting to the Shriners Auditorium on May 1st of this year.
Second, or make
Nope.
a motion.
All right, motion by Mr. DePalma, seconded by Mr. O'Mahony. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Mr. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Kyra,
Yes.
Mr. DePalma,
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. It is unanimous. Thank you again to the Shriners. And Mr. Hall, I would hope that we can do the same amount of communication, the same types of communication that we did for the election to lead up to town meetings, so that folks are aware of the change.
Yes.
And our last board to consider item is item number 7 on the agenda. It is a request of John Romano on behalf of the Wilmington Sons of Italy to use the municipal parking lot of the 4th of July building on Saturday, May 27th, 2021, and Sunday, May 28th, 2021, from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. for a drive-through diaper donation.
Chair, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
A motion from Mr. Bendel, seconded by Mr. Kyer. Discussion. Only add that the schedule for both days is as follows, just for folks who may be interested. They'll be setting up from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., the Easter Bunny will be waving and handing out individually wrapped Easter eggs with Hershey Kisses in them. From 11 a.m. to to noon, committee members who will be masked and gloved will hand out individually wrapped bakery-provided baked goods. 12 a.m. from noon will be the drive-up diaper drop-off. Everyone dropping off will be remaining in their vehicles, and starting from noon and ending around 1 o'clock will be the breakdown and the cleanup. So we will be using the 4th of July building as well. Thank you to the Sons of Italy for a
Mr. Chair.
Drop off and somehow entertaining and enjoyable experience. Mr. Kyra?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is the diaper drive that we've been doing for some time now for the gifts of love, and it's we're collecting diapers and wipes, and it's given to individuals in need of that. It seems that diapers and wipes are not available through state aid or help, and this Gifts of Love, which was established, they look for this help, and it's really needed. And so, because of the restrictions with the pandemic, the Sons of Italy was trying to think how they could continue on helping, and this was one way to do it, with the hopes that people will drop something off, and then they'll get a little wave from the Easter Bunny. And of course, on the back of the request, it's all COVID restrictions, COVID needed. We will follow the guidelines, and of course get a hold of the Board of Health to make sure that everything is safe.
Thank you, Mr. Kyra. So we do have a motion that has been seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Bendel?
Yes.
Mr. Kyra?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony?
Yes.
And I will make it unanimous. I'm a yes as well. On
Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, before you go on to the next topic, public comments, I didn't want to throw off your rhythm, but I don't know that we completed number 3 for the approval of the minutes. And
We didn't. Selectman Kyra, I was going to say the same.
I know we did the Treasury warrant, but I wasn't sure about the minutes. I didn't know if you want to go on that.
Mr. Kyra, if you want my job, you can come and take it.
Did I miss it? What did you say?
If you want my job, you can come and take it. Anyway, all right, so we'll double back. This is a well-oiled machine, folks. We'll double back to agenda item number 3. We're just going to take it in shuffled order. It's like an iPod from back in the day.
Mr. Kyra has thrown the red flag, and he's correct. The challenge flag, and it's.
That's fine. That's
Well,
fine.
Beverly put these.
No loss of downs.
All right. I think the entire meeting was out of order, and it's probably my fault. So anyway, we have minutes from our last meeting of January 11, 2021. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. O'Mahony. Discussion, please say no. Seeing none, Mr. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Tyra,
Yes.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Fantastic. Now on to public comments. Mr. O'Neill, do you have anyone on the line?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. To make a public comment, please dial 646-558-8656. Then enter meeting ID 898-0259-4122. You'll have to press pound and then press pound again at the next voice prompt. And then you will have to raise the virtual hand by pressing *9. Mr. O'Neill, I'll remain on for about another minute or so, just to give people a chance to call in if they so choose.
Mr. Chair, since we're waiting, I just want to know why Selectman O'Mahony looks like she's posing for that picture on the screen. I'm looking at the screen here, and me and Greg and Gary are all look like we're talking. Joe Marie, you're smiling.
I look pretty disappointed.
I must have
Not-
said something
not
really
like-
funny that you're all reacting to.
Can't we get better pictures of us?
Yeah.
Mr. O'Neill,
My
you have-
hair is so much longer now. I'm just saying. I mean, I don't want to sound like the only woman on the board, but that doesn't even look like me anymore. I went from the soccer mom hair. Now I'm trying to do something different, and I get reminded of it every meeting.
Please feel free to email pictures.
Yeah.
I
don't know how to
love
do
it.
that.
Don't change it.
Glamour shots.
Go off agenda if somebody wants to make a motion to have Mr. O'Neill make some of us good looking.
It might be difficult.
Seeing none, the motion fails. Mr. O'Neill, do we have any callers looking to make a public comment?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay, we'll go on to announcements. We don't have any announcements. Mr. Bendel.
Mr. Chair, just 3 quick ones here. Like you mentioned earlier, happy early birthday to Bev. Get well soon to Wendy. And congrats to all the student athletes playing in winter sports. It's fantastic. Enjoy watching it on WCTV. And then I really want to encourage everybody to tune into these Finance Committee meetings that are about to be read off, the dates and times. Selectman O'Mahony mentioned it earlier. If you can't watch it live, make sure you check out the replay. This is a very crucial time for our town budget. Very, very important leading up to town meeting. And like I said, the last meeting, kudos to the Finance Committee. They're about to put in a lot of hours of work, volunteer. So I look forward to their questions and their presentations. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bendel. Yeah, I know just as a former member, it's a great opportunity to find out what each of the different town departments are doing, particularly given the circumstances. You'll find out how each of the departments have had to be flexible and adapt to the changing circumstances. So it's certainly a lot of work goes into the Finance Committee meetings, but a lot more work goes in from the departments and the town employees that have had to get creative and how to continue to serve the community. Any further announcements?
No, Mr. Bendel, I think framed it very well. Happy birthday, Bev.
Happy
Get
birthday.
better, Wendy.
Birthday, Bev.
Mr. DePalma, I couldn't tell if you were trying to make an announcement or if you were just leaning.
I was just
All right.
stretching away.
All right. New business. Seeing none, Mr. Hull, do you mind taking us through important dates?
Certainly, important dates. So beginning tomorrow, January 26th, Finance Committee, all these meetings are virtual, starts at 7 p.m. The fiscal 22 budget overview, revenue and general government. Many of the financial departments will be taken up during that discussion. January 28th, Finance Committee, 7 p.m. Planning and Conservation, Building Inspector and Board of Appeals and Board of Health. February 2nd, Finance Committee, 7 p.m. Department of Public Works. February 4th, Finance Committee, 7 p.m. Veterans Services, Elderly Services Commission. February 5th is the last day to submit petition warrant articles for inclusion on the warrant for the annual town meeting, which is May 1st, 2021. Selectmen's next meeting is February 8th, 7 p.m. February 9th is another Finance Committee meeting, 7 p.m. Public Buildings Department. February 11th, Finance Committee, 7 p.m. Public Library, Recreation and Historical Commission. February 15th, offices will be closed due to President's Day. February 22nd is another Board of Selectmen's meeting, 7 p.m. February 23rd, Finance Committee is 7 p.m. Police Department, Public Safety Central Dispatch and Fire Department. February 25th, Finance Committee, 7 p.m. Town Clerk and IT. March 2nd, Finance Committee, 7 p.m. Shawshene Tech School District. And then March 4th, Finance Committee, 7 p.m. Wilmington Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Hull. Lastly on our agenda is our salute to service. Walter Sevener was a private first class in the U.S. Army during World War II. He served from May 1946 to May 1947. He's a longtime Wilmington resident who lives with his son Cannon, who is a Navy veteran himself, who served during Vietnam. Walter is very active, cuts his own firewood, and is a true representative of the greatest generation. His work ethic is truly inspiring, and we are fortunate to have men like Walter who have served our country during World War II. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I got one statement I'd like to make first, please. If you don't mind.
Sure, Mr. Palmer.
I just want to congratulate the Wilmington Police Department for being re-accredited from the Mass Police Accreditation Commission. Just a shout out to them and say congratulations.
All right.
And Mr. Chair, along with what Gary said, Mr. De Palma said, it's worth mentioning, maybe Town Manager Hull can mention or Selectman O'Mahony, the MBTA received a $1 million grant for the North Station. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, Mr. Hull. You know, I'm kind of throwing a curveball at you, but it was on the paper and something
Yes,
worth mentioning, I would feel.
It is. I did see it first in the paper. I reached out to Senator Tarr's office to try to get some additional information on that. And I don't have any more to share other than what was in the account, but it was an effort that the MBTA put in, filing a grant with the federal government for this $1 million project. It sounds like it may be different than what we were originally expecting based upon the prior conversations, and that's what I'm trying to determine as to whether, how this changes what was originally planned. If you recall, it was a much smaller budget that was being proposed. They were going to slide the station up the rail a bit, but it was going to be essentially recycled material from another project, and still sounded like it was going to be able to accommodate what we were seeking. But so I have a request in to get more information. But the good news is it appears that we're going to have certainly a refurbished station, but equally importantly, if not more importantly, the station itself will be moved up the tracks so that we are not continuing to have the issue of when the trains let people on or off, the crossing gates are blocking emergency response vehicles.
That's good news.
Great news.
And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Sorry. Motion from Mr. Kyra, seconded by Mr. De Palma. All those are Mr. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Kyra,
Yes.
Mr. De Palma,
Yes.
Ms. O'Mahony. Hey, we'll skip you. We don't need it unanimous.
Oh, I was muted. I was about to cop an attitude. Like I said, yes, yes.
Thank you. And I will make it unanimous. This is the longest good night in Wilmington. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Have a nice one.